So we're Knapp and Ella, or Ella and Knapp.
Yeah.
And we aren't originally from Maine, but we have lived in Maine now since end of 1978. So we feel like we're from Maine. We have enough winter clothes to prove that we're from Maine. And we're members of the Portland Camera Club, and we've probably been members there for about 10 years.
We're not club people, really. We were drug in there kicking and screaming.
Not really. They're nice people. We like being there. So we've been around since 1899, and we meet.
That's the club, not us.
Well, I don't know. Maybe been around since 1899. It's feeling like that now. We meet September to May on Monday nights, just like you guys apparently. And we do have a website, which we would welcome you to come and see what's going on there, portlandcameraclub.org. And we have a calendar, and it shows, who's speaking, what we're doing. We have competitions, we have critique nights, we have speakers, obviously. We have tech, kind of like tech nights where we hopefully learn new tech stuff.
And one thing we've been asked, we've done a couple talks on camera clubs, and we don't know why people pick this topic, but anyway, we got hooked into several talks. And we've thought about the question, how do you get people to join? And we've tried within the Portland Camera Club multiple ways: posters, Facebook, Flickr, and we found what really works is personal contact. Where many of the members have business cards made up. When they see someone out taking pictures and they find out they live somewhere in the Portland area, they give them essentially a business card with the club website and explain to them how to find the calendar. And we found that to be very effective in getting people to participate in the club. Anything else?
But getting people to participate, that's a whole nother
Oh yeah,
topic.
that's a different thing. And coming to meetings and then doing something, that's different.
And we talked about that with Matt Payne on the podcast that Jay referenced.
Okay. We found we had to tell them to do things, not necessarily wait for volunteers.
So we're going to not bore you too much. If we start boring you, just say something and we'll shut up. So we just want you to know a little bit about us. We're not professional speakers. We're not here to sell you anything. We're retired, and we like to make photographs, and we've been doing it for a while. I got out of college. I started because, like probably several of you, my father was a photographer, and he let me borrow his camera, and I was pretty wowed by the results. So while I was in college, I took one course in the journalism school on photography and continued to be wowed by it, and got out of college and went to work in another college as the only college photographer. So it was a lot of PR work and quite enjoyable. So a couple of years there. Then once I married and we moved, I got a job, oddly enough, with a hospital. Had no idea that there was such a thing as a hospital photographer. And that was kind of an eye-opener. I was under 30 at the time and certainly never seen any dead people. So that was always a fun moment.
So she got to photograph them and work with the police forensic people and things, a lot of more interesting things than she's letting on.
And so when we moved to Maine, they have a very big hospital, teaching hospital here. And they had a very large audiovisual department at the time. And I managed to wrangle a job there and stayed there until we had our only child. And then I veered off into other things and came back to photography later, much later.
And I started out of high school instead of college. I was in the Navy back in '65. If you didn't go to college, you got drafted pretty fast. And I found out that in lieu of being drafted, you can volunteer. And I thought being with the Navy, where you had your bunk with you most of the time, sure beats slogging through the jungles of Vietnam. although the Navy did present some interesting, let's say, offers in that direction while I was there. However, I failed to volunteer to go to Cambodia. Ended up in northern Alaska, well, actually out on the end of the Aleutian Islands instead. The people in the Navy said that had nothing to do with me turning down my volunteer opportunity to be in Cambodia, but I'm a bit suspicious of that. So I went on after the Navy to become a chemical engineer, and I used photography quite a bit in the early days of my engineering work, doing thermal imaging, very high-speed video, high-speed strobe type stuff to the people that didn't know anything about photography. So Ella and I both had working knowledge of photography in very different realms when we were first married. And as life got in the way and the hour and a half long commutes to get to work and things like that, Ella had a 5-minute commute. I envied her. We stopped taking pictures and didn't really pick it up again until about, when digital came out. Because when Ella stopped working as a photographer, we lost our darkroom access. And, paying to get stuff printed was expensive, and we didn't want to do that. So we switched to digital, as many people did back in the mid 2000s.
Yep.
Probably our first real digital camera was 2005. And we bought that because we were going on what we thought would be a trip of a lifetime. And when we added up all the film that we'd need to buy and the processing, it was much less expensive to buy a digital camera.
Little did we know.
Yeah. We didn't know how much a digital camera really cost. 4, 5, 6 computers later, I think I'm up to something like 15 terabytes of storage. Yeah, the camera didn't really cost anything. It's all the other stuff that goes along with it. Eats your life up, software, etc.
Okay.
Anyway, so if you want to look at our pictures, stonecoastphotography.com. We won't bore you with that. As Ella said, we've lived in Maine since '78. We are not from Maine, though, and the people here in Maine are very fast to let us know that. So if you're wondering what we looked like through the years, there we are, the upper left. People ask how we get along together taking pictures. It started by riding tandem bicycles. You either learn to hate each other or love each other when you're on a tandem bicycle.
Or somewhere in between.
Because it really requires a lot of cooperation. And as Jay said, like many people, we love to travel. We've done a lot of traveling. I traveled internationally quite a bit for my job. Ella traveled quite a bit when she was in college and just out of college. And since then, whenever we can find a cheap trip, cheap being the operative word, we'll head somewhere.
To somewhere pretty, though.
So somewhere pretty. And since about 2011, 12, we confined most of our travel to the northern climates because we found that China and Asia, Southeast Asia, we were just too sick when we got back. We're not as wholesome as we thought we would be. So that upper right picture, I guess it's right on your picture, the one with all the snow, that was almost 2 years ago, and that was our last big adventure. And that shows the kind of climate we like to travel in and take pictures in. And the bottom right is a picture by one of our friends of how we travel these days. And we'll get back to that later in the talk. Jay wanted us to talk a little bit about our basically that's our rolling photo bag.
So our philosophy is we try not to rely on too many rules. We like to look at all types of art, and so we draw from those types of art. We try and create what we love And Knapp will be quick to tell you that he doesn't take pictures of anything that breathes. And we like nature. We like the outdoors.
As long as it doesn't breathe, it's okay.
Street photography. We're kind of agnostic about it. We don't classify ourselves as, landscape photographers or portrait photographers. We are true amateurs in that we love all of it and try and learn from it. And then we love how everybody thinks that a photograph tells the truth. There doesn't have to be truth in a photograph. It can be just total, your own reality.
But from the beginning days of photography, there was not truth in photography.
No.
Ella is a student of the history of photography and spent quite a bit of time with Brenton Hamilton in Maine Media workshops, taking his, was it 3 semesters?
Yeah, of history
of photography. And one of the first very successful photographer, Gustave Legray, if you look at his pictures, there's the same cloud in almost every picture he ever took.
He made composites with glass plates.
Yeah. So there is not truth in photography. There never has been. And as a student of color and things like that, I know, and as an engineer, I know there's a whole lot that gets in between what we see as a picture in the field and what we see when it gets to our screen. A lot of people have had their fingers on it.
So we also talked about working together when we were talking with Matt, and we are a couple, and we do shoot together, and we do process together, and we don't share equipment very well. That hasn't worked for us, because if that perfect lens, if you're in a situation, you're both going to want that perfect lens. So we have learned not to think we're going to share, but we're very willing to share ideas with each other. And we have a little thing that we do if we've been out shooting in the same location, and one of us really is wowed by that and thinks that they have the very best picture of their maybe entire life, then we say to the other person, I hosey that. That means the other person cannot have that picture for competition or for posting on Facebook or what have you. It's theirs. So yeah, we honor that.
Pretty much. We do have discussions later. If it's an exhibition and we really need a good picture, we might do some negotiating. But we try to hold up or honor the person that said, I saw that first.
So we're going to get into what who are we to say what keeps people inspired? But this is what the core of our talk is. And if you have any questions, if you want to just blurt it out, that's fine with us. We're not here to lecture, really. So inspiration.
Yeah, we are not inspirational speakers.
So we'll start out with our favorite photographers, and we kind of grouped them. Some of them you've probably heard of, some of them maybe not. So on the upper, if we start on the left-hand side, I'll take the left-hand side, Knapp can have the right-hand side. So the top 3 ladies, Maggie Taylor, Fran Foreman, and Carol Eisenberg, are all compositors. And I hope you're familiar, at least with the top 2. They're very famous. Carol Eisenberg is a Maine-based photographer, and she got her master's at Maine Media. And she unabashedly produces what she calls digital art. She doesn't try and fluff it up and make it something that's not. And she does really interesting, very packed with information, kind of floral things. And I've drawn some inspiration from her, which we'll see later. Endo Fuchs, we've run across on Instagram. He's an expert at street photography, black and white work. I'm not sure where he's from. Is
Austria, I believe.
Austria, okay.
He lives in Italy.
Harold Ross is your next door neighbor. I hope everybody knows him. He's a master of painting with light or shaping with light. And we had the pleasure of going to his house and having a workshop with him. and just find his, I mean, truly a master. If you're interested at all in that type of work, we highly recommend going to see him and taking one of his workshops. Even if you never do it yourself, you will learn a lot about lighting and composing, and he's just a really nice, pleasant guy, as is his wife.
And definitely look up his work if you don't know about it, because it is drop dead gorgeous.
He has the workshops right at his house.
Yes.
Okay.
2 people at a time only. And you work for 2 days and you get 1 picture. You
Well,
work
one
really
picture
hard.
each.
Yeah,
One
one
picture
picture
each.
but you work very hard for
Yeah,
2 days.
Yeah. And you have homework before you get there. And he has a delightful wife, Vera. And so we highly recommend him just all around. And Sebastião Salgado, I hope everybody knows of him. Has this massive book out. It's absolutely gorgeous. He's photographed all around the world. He's been a socially conscious photographer. I would love to hear him speak sometime.
He has a movie out. There has been a movie made about him, and it is a fascinating movie. And he's backed off from photography and gone into restoring his family's farm, and
It's a ranch.
ranch in Brazil, because he's trying to undo all the damage that over the generations his family has done to the land. And the most unforgettable photographs I've seen are the stuff he did in the first Gulf War, and especially in the when the oil fields and were burning
In Kuwait.
And it's just haunting photographs.
Yeah.
Okay, my turn.
Your turn.
Okay.
His documentary is really awesome.
Yeah, it is.
It is. It's really worth trying to find.
Yeah.
Okay, Sean. Some of you probably know Sean Bagshaw. I hope you do. If you don't know Sean, Sean's a landscape photographer. He is a ex-science teacher that has turned professional photographer, workshop guide, and he is a master of using luminosity mask. And I would say if there's anything that's affected my photography in a technical sense, it's what I've learned from watching Sean, and also from the guy that developed the technique of using luminosity masking, which is Tony Kuiper. I've learned so much from those two, and I can do so much to a photograph to make it pleasing to me in a short period of time using those techniques. So Sean has a lot on YouTube. Definitely go look him up. Don't be overwhelmed by what appears to be the complexity of it. It technically could be overwhelming, but it's pretty easy to do.
Does everybody know Sean? Maybe?
I'm glad you brought him up.
He also speaks at camera clubs. He's going to
Yes.
speak at the Portland Camera Club. So
He's a good speaker.
yeah, we saw him at
Hint,
NECCC too.
Yeah,
So-
I've taken workshops from him. We saw him at, the New England Council of Camera Clubs.
It's called NECCC.
It's an over body for camera clubs in the New England area. And they,
Probably doesn't reach Pennsylvania.
yeah, it probably doesn't reach that far south.
But you guys could probably come.
Oh yeah, you could. And in typical years, they'll put on a 4-day
Yeah.
conference in the summer, usually in Amherst, Mass, and all kinds of speakers show up. It's a very good value for your money and your time. So
Yeah.
when things kind of open up again, take a look at that.
Bill said that he has a tutorial for $5. So
Okay, Clyde Butcher. We walked into an exhibition in South Carolina with Clyde Butcher's photographs. And you walk in the door and it's like you walked into a wall because those prints were just so gorgeous. He prints black and white only,
Shoots black and white on
shoots black and white only.
film.
The prints are, some of them are 8 or 10 feet high, 6 to 8 feet across. He has a hell of a dark room because he handles all this stuff. He's the only guy I know that goes photographing with an 8x10 film camera in a boat with a 12-foot tripod that he puts down in the water.
Wow.
He's the Ansel Adams of the Everglades.
Yes.
We saw him.
Yeah, he presented to our club in the
Oh,
Yeah,
past.
we
great.
won't tell you anything
Yeah.
about him.
Okay, you know all you need to know then. Okay, Mark Munch, we've known since the mid 2000s.
Son of David.
And David, and before that, Joseph Munch.
Do you know him?
You know Mark,
No. Landscaper.
good landscaper. He's figured out a way. Well, 3rd generation photographer, working photographer, commercial photographer. Fantastic processing, composition,
Yeah.
very practical in his approach to photography.
Yeah.
He gives 2 to 3 free webinar workshops a month. and
Yeah.
They're wonderful.
Yeah. You should take advantage of those. Those are great.
So you look at Munch workshops on the resources page, and you can see the presentations they've been making.
Yeah.
Again, Mark is a wonderful person. We've traveled with him all over the world. Ella's been down to Antarctica with him. We really enjoy being with Mark, and we've learned a lot from him. Cole Thompson.
Oh, he talks to
Okay.
camera clubs.
Cole talks to camera clubs, and it's a very interesting talk too.
You should get him.
Get him. Anyone know Cole?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Black and white. Cole goes his own way, unabashedly. He practices what he calls photographic celibacy. He does not look at anyone else's work. What he does is what he does. And we like Cole a lot. We have 3 of his prints hanging on our walls.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
He's a really nice guy. He has a very interesting talk also. Tony Sweet. You guys know Tony.
Everybody knows
Tony.
Tony.
Everybody knows Tony.
And Tony does everything great.
Yeah. Tony is the universal photographer.
And
Julianne Cost.
she does everything great.
Yeah, we like listening to her. We like looking at her images. Okay. So, and then there's a ...
A whole lot of other people.
whole lot of other people. These are the ones that just first came to our mind.
So Red Drew, everybody must know Red Drew. And he was kind of my beginning inspiration for using textures, let alone the iPhone. So I wasn't really good at Photoshop, and I didn't really know how to do all that stuff. I could do Lightroom. But once I kind of dug in with Red, and he showed all of his ways he could, we call it boogie up a picture, I, learned a lot, and it kind of helped kind of get me into the Photoshop world, doing textures and things to my pictures. So we wanted to mention him.
And she had to get into the Photoshop world on herself because I told her a number of years ago, I'm not processing your pictures anymore because I have enough to do on my own. So we had a photographic processing divorce.
Amicable divorce, however.
Not all that amicable. She was really pissed with me.
Okay, no, we'll move along.
And Tony, you know him.
You know Tony, and we just couldn't help but put up a whole bunch of, look at the variety that man can do. And he is a master of walking out his door and picking up 2 or 3 good shots, no matter what.
And that top left one, we've been to that place before. And I have looked at that same limb, and I cannot get a picture that looks as good as Tony did.
I know, it's
Used
amazing.
this, I did it in infrared, same spot. I usually don't do that kind of stuff. I look for tripod holes in the ground, but we really like that church. And same sort of thing, the bottom right, that is Eagle Lake in Maine, which is a place we love to photograph. And we go there a lot. And here Tony comes back with, he's not even from Maine. And he comes back with these wonderful pictures from our state. It's just not fair.
And that picture on the lower left of the leaves, that's basically a Pyrex glass thing with leaves and water, and put it outside and iced it up and took a picture of it. It looks great. So you can just do great things with the simplest items.
So we're looking at that
Oops.
kind of stuff always is inspiring. The other thing that inspires us
Is new lenses or cameras. Who hasn't had that happen?
and Ella, especially with lenses,
Yes.
she's
kinda-
just terrible lens junkie. And if it's a prime lens, she wants it. And she has multiple, it's like 35 millimeter lenses. I said, why you need them all? So, well, they're all different.
Different things, something else that's inspirational is new trails, new locations. And you can probably find some new locations kind of close to where you are. I'm not quite sure where
That's
all
Lubec.
these are. Oh, Lubec, yes. So not too far away from us is Lubec, and
That's the left-hand map.
they have all sorts of trails along the coast, walking trails. You wouldn't really consider it serious hiking, but it's very nice walking, and you can find lots of interesting things to photograph.
And so when we were looking for things to do this year where we couldn't leave the state, we go to places like Lubec, because when we used to visit there was nobody there, but we found out there are people there now, and they wouldn't let us cross the border into Canada. So we had to stop at Lubec. We'd planned to be in Newfoundland and Labrador this spring. So we went looking for trails and found some gorgeous trails. There's an app called alltrails.com. It's Leb's website and an iPhone app or a phone app. And if you're looking for trails in your area that you might not know about, that you might go take your camera out and look and see what's there, look for All Trails, look at their website and see what you might find. The ones in the right-hand picture are the trails around our house. So we're very fortunate that we have all these trails. It's close to 200 miles of trails that we can walk on within the city we live in.
Or close by.
Or close by.
And of course, new processing techniques.
This is presenting yourself with a challenge. And this is something we heard from a talk that Julianne Koss made for,
Santa Fe.
Santa Fe workshops. And she said that one thing she does is when some of the techie guys tell her about something new they've done, she goes and makes pictures to use to practice that technique with. So she doesn't take what she has already. She goes and makes new pictures. And I found that is a really good thing to do when we're looking for stuff to do these days, or different ways of doing stuff. So the luminosity mask stuff's on the left. If you haven't learned about picture postcard workflow, that's the one that's in the picture in the middle. Back when I was working, I worked with the printing industry quite a bit. And there was one guy that was by far the premier pre-press guy. And his name was Margulis.
Dan.
Dan Margulis. And he works with a color space that some of you may know about called LAB. And there's so much you can do with that by learning how to use the other color spaces within Photoshop. If you don't know about this kind of stuff, go type in LAB color processing Photoshop and see what comes up. Now, I had a pretty good background in color, having been to RIT and DuPont, studied color because I used to make colored paper. And I found Dan's stuff confusing. He is a horrible speaker, a terrible writer, but if you can kind of slog through it all, there's a lot to learn there and some very good tools. You can move fast. The other thing that's fun to play with is making slideshows. When I run out of other things I want to do, I make a slideshow because it gets you thinking about your pictures or pictures you might want to shoot. And we've done a lot of slideshows. If you go look at our website, there are quite a few there, and they range from Southeast Asia, China, up into the Arctic, through the Middle East, and even some from the US.
So the idea behind the slideshow really is sequencing pictures, whittling it down to your 40 favorite pictures, making it only 4 minutes long, and sequencing to tell the story.
It's curating your work instead. You learn to kill your babies.
And we're going to go. So that's all the usual suspects. I mean, those were the ones we highlighted, but free Zoom sessions, Matt Payne podcasts, projects. Knapp talked about the processing techniques and making images to practice with it, photo stacking, compositing, masking. Go look at art. I know galleries are open. Print and frame your work. I mean, it doesn't cost that much now to get a printer that will do a decent job. Canon makes them. Probably the paper is the thing that's going to get you. That's kind of pricey. And the ink is pricey. But you don't have to do it every day. And it's such a feeling of accomplishment. And it is inspirational. If you shoot a picture and say, I know that with this paper, this picture would look really good.
And one thing Ella discovered lately was, she was back to Carol Eisenberg, is Hahnemühle has a metallic paper out now that is gorgeous.
Unbelievable.
It doesn't look like anything on the market. And so Ella is now compositing images just to print on that paper.
Hoping that it'll work really well.
And it makes the metallics or the golds and the silvers on the image look like beautiful. It's gold leaf or silver leaf.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Hahnemühle's an awesome paper company.
Oh, yeah.
So they're very legit. And the thing, whenever people are using metallic surfaces, acrylic surfaces, that sort of thing, the thing you always have to be wondering about is, okay, how long are those images going to last?
Well, this stuff will last.
Yeah. Hahnemühle's a good company. So.
Yep.
And it doesn't look like
it doesn't look plastic.
It doesn't look like plastic. It doesn't look like the metallic papers you've probably seen. It's very subtle.
Yeah.
The deep colors still look like deep colors. It's as you get into the lighter areas, the silver starts coming through, and it's very interesting to look at. And
don't forget, while you're sitting around with nothing else to do, nowhere to go, you plan your road trip for when we do get back out there. We just today found another place up in Newfoundland where it's a UNESCO heritage site with fossils at the water's edge at one of the jut out areas on the edge of the island. So Knapp was busy adding it to our list. We're gonna go.
We're heading there. We tried to go this year. We'll try again 2022, not 21. I don't think Canada's gonna let us in yet.
Yeah.
So we spend a lot of time getting the inspiration from planning where we want to go.
Yeah, getting all excited. But we have what we're dealing with for the past 9 months has been stuck at home photography. So how do you stay inspired with stuck at home photography? And I'm going to go first. I have, I think, 10 pictures. I'm going to try and keep it quick. I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. And they were all kind of in the genre of Tony Sweet, just very close to home. So we took a walk. We have something called the Back Cove Trail. And this is a bridge we have to cross. We're right next to lots of traffic. So to the right is
Interstate.
It's like 4 or 6 lanes of traffic whizzing past. But to the left is water through those bars, and it was a bright sunny day, and it made wonderful patterns. So there you go, on the bridge. This one's called Wee, and it was at the Eastern Prom playground before they shut the playgrounds. It's a black and white picture in Lightroom that I then took a brush and brushed in the color individually, the color, to kind of make it look more like one of those old-fashioned hand-colored photos. And I don't know that little girl. This is called Three Buds. This was also in March, and we were in quarantine at that point because I think our first Zoom meeting at the club was March 16th. So March 29th, we were just out walking the neighborhood, and it was a rainy, drizzly day. We found these little pussy willows blooming, and I thought they were beautiful, and we had 2 photo sessions there. I have hundreds of pictures from that. And I just love our backyard. We have lots of hostas. We have shady yard. This was now, I was into the summer, but I'm still stuck at home. I borrowed Knapp's infrared camera, went out, so everything was black and white. I didn't have any choice. But then I colored it with textures and a color overlay, color fill in Photoshop overlay to just add back in a little color and make it look like an old-fashioned picture. And I did a series in the yard using that technique. This is also near that bridge that I showed you earlier. This is the narrow gauge railroad yard. It's along a walking trail, and it's got all these rundown buildings and rundown old rail cars, and it's all kind of part of their museum. And this was a pretty boring picture. There wasn't much going on in the sky. And so I came home and I said, well, I'm just going to take all these pictures that I did from the walk and come up with some sort of texture combo that made it look old-fashioned and gave it a little life. And I kind of liked it.
What Ella didn't tell you is she has spent time at Maine Media with Brenton Hamilton doing wet plate collodion photography. She's done platinum palladium, zeotype, cyanotype. And so since we don't want to set up those dark rooms here, she resorts to the digital fake photography to make them look like she loves to get out of the dark room.
What was the name of that railroad and the location?
It's the Narrow Gauge Railroad. It's in Portland, Maine. And it's right down on the water. To the left in that picture, the little piece of daylight you see between the red car and the green building, that's actually the bay, Casco Bay over there. So it's right on the water. You can walk down there.
They have a couple miles of track. They're still running the trains.
You can ride the train.
And a lot of the rolling stock came from railroads in Maine. I believe some of the locomotives came from the logging railroads that were here. They have steam locomotive, and they also have a diesel locomotive. And their Polar Express is a perennial hit. And it's also a wonderful place to go take pictures with all this steam coming out of the engine. And they're running at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, which is dark here in the winter at 3:30. The sun's down. And so it makes really interesting photography.
This was out at everybody's favorite Fort Williams, where the Portland Head Lighthouse is. It's just walking the trails there. And this gentleman was walking along the ridge. It did have those clouds in the sky. Those aren't fake. Those were real. And those 2 trees are real. And then those birds were added with a little bird brush, which I do enjoy, to add a little extra interest, and of course colorized heavily. But it just pleased me, so I won't apologize. And back to that new camera inspiration. This was a new camera in November, a small little walk around with a set lens, no interchangeable lenses. And it's called Parking Lot Reverie. And it's a reflection. And the picture originally is oriented the other way. but I flipped it so that the tree was standing up and put a couple of textures on it. And that was my choice picture to print on that honeymoon paper we were talking about. And that goldy part of the texture and the silvery part of the texture, I mean, it's radiant. It's really beautiful. So that's a nothing picture that I ended up really loving. Back in June, we went to Acadia for a quick trip. Went over to Tarn.
National Park.
Mhm.
Acadia National
National
Park.
Park, yeah. Went over to the Tarn where there's a lot of little grasses growing in the water. Sometimes you can go there and just make an exquisitely beautiful picture if the sky and the sun and everything is just right. Other times you just get funny little grasses, which didn't look like much. So I came home and I don't know where I read or heard about this technique of using the polar coordinates distortion filter in Photoshop. And you do it twice. You flip it one way and then you flip it another way so that it ends up with a circle. So taking a picture of just these few little grasses, so there's a lot of blank water there, which allowed me to put the textures on it to give it some depth, to give it some color, and then add in the birds. And I call this leaving. And I really liked it. I ended up doing a massive amount of things that I called seeing in circles. So I just went through a lot of stuff that I'd shot. And if it looked like it was going to be conducive, I would give it a whirl and see what it looked like. And I ended up with a lot of pretty interesting pictures. I think I could make a show of them.
Ella, I have a question on that one.
Yeah.
Did you do the polar coordinate twirl first and then add all your textures and your birds?
Yes. The
Okay.
first thing you have to do is you have to crop it square.
Right. I've actually played with this because someone in the club explained how to do this a couple meetings ago, and I tried it right away and came up with something I liked. But I figured you probably did that first and then you added your texture and those birds. I just really love that.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I did. Once you do the coordinates, then you can add and just keep adding. I mean, move them around and change the orientation, the layering and the different blend modes and everything. And just,
I might have missed it. What's the name of this process?
I don't know if it has a name. It's,
Okay.
I call it twirling.
it's
Yeah.
It's the polar.
polar coordinates filter under distortion filters.
Yeah.
So yeah.
A lot of times you'll see this.
I'll put something in the newsletter.
A lot of people call this
Tiny
we'll do something
planets.
called tiny planets.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, this is doing it multiple times.
Yeah, it's two. So you orient it one way and orient it the other. I can't remember. I have an action for it now because that's kind of, you just go blip, 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 you do it. And then if it works, or you can turn the picture around, if the circle doesn't look quite right the way it's oriented, you can just turn your picture and till you get it the way you think it looks balanced.
So Ella has enough for a complete show of these
Yes.
now.
I just find somebody to let me show them.
Yeah.
So I just got more and more into this whole going down this rabbit hole of making composites, not with any particular story in mind, like Fran Foreman does, or Maggie Taylor, who I admire greatly. But I would just go out into the neighborhood, and this was in my personal neighborhood on the sidewalks, walking around. I call it Flower Rave. This was in September, so I found hydrangeas that were, on the way out. I found these little daisy things that were kind of not all that great shape. You see some little dead flowers in there in the upper right. And basically, I just started out with a picture. The base picture is a shadow in my bathroom of the floor and wall. It's nothing. And it just added the darkness and the lightness. And I went on to just go, I was raving probably. I went on with textures, patinas, overlays of shapes, colors, and smoke You see a little smoke twirling around in the middle. I have an overlay of little bubbles along the lower part of it. And, you know, I don't know if I'd call it great art, but it certainly was different and appealed to me, and I liked it.
Kept her off the streets for a long time.
And I was just doing more and more with Photoshop to see where I could push it and make a picture out of something that I call just bits. And my last picture is called Water World. And this was, so instead of shooting for this one, I went back into the catalog, and it came from 2 pictures from previous trips, one in 2016. So the background is the Okefenokee Swamp. And it's a picture that is been inverted and made 2 pieces of it put together to make one, if that makes sense.
Reflected.
Yeah, it kind of reflected it. And then the bird came from a 2019 trip. We were in South Carolina at Huntington State Park. I'm not a bird photographer, but I managed to luck out and get this heron flying. And I could practice cutting it out and getting it into this picture. And again, tons of, you know, all kinds of swirls. I have a moon in there in the middle. That circle is actually a moon phase. And the big learning was to get with Aaron Nace and Flern and learn how to make a reflection in the water of that flying bird with one of his videos on YouTube. And so, you know, right now I'm working on some ice, trying to come up with something. And it doesn't work every time, but the more I sit there and mess with it and move stuff around, I think I really like it. It's kind of moved my photography in a different direction. Yeah, I'm my own inspiration at this moment.
So Ellis talked about the ice. So this past, well, it was New Year's Day, but since we're retired, we didn't realize it was New Year's Day because we don't know what day it is or date, or we don't pay much attention to that anymore. So we decided, since we haven't had any snow in a while, it's been cold, we'd go looking for ponds, frozen ponds, because we got some clear ice. And we were looking specifically for lily pads that have been frozen into the ice. And so that was an expedition. Went up about an hour drive from our house looking for frozen lily pads. So Ella's got some. She's been inspired by it. She is pulling her hair out and trying to process it.
Come up with something.
Come up with something. But she has a bunch of frozen lily pads down through the ice. That's it shows real potential.
So yeah, so look around and see what you got out there. That it doesn't matter if you photograph it to be what it is. You can photograph it to be what it could be.
All right.
All your turn.
Okay. What you're going to see now is really different from what she was showing. Okay. Out walking around. A lot of times when I walk around, I'll take a camera body, and a really lightweight one lens, and this particular one is one I've had converted to infrared. So this is inside the city limits. This is a cove. It's a saltwater cove that has a really nice walking trail around it. It's about a 3-mile walk. And just walking around looking for things that would look good in infrared, in black and white. And like I say, my pictures are a lot different from Ella's. Mine's usually a single exposure. Quite often it's black and white. I don't know why, but that just is. Some of this stuff just looks better that way. The one on the left is a weed or something like that. I found that same day and shot up against the sky. The right-hand side is an infrared picture of Portland Head Lighthouse. I don't know, any of you have a chance to visit this lighthouse?
Yes.
Okay, it's a great place to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The lighthouse is wonderful. It dates back to the
George Washington.
Yeah, George Washington authorized it being built. And the cliffs there, this is a place called Portland Head. So there are cliffs out along the ocean. And my favorite rocks are there. I think I have a picture of one of my favorite rocks. So I spent a lot of time out in this place. But with a lot of people working from home, there are just too many people out there these days.
And
Someone has,
is that
yeah.
straight out of camera with the infrared, pretty much?
No, this is a 720 nanometer cutoff,
Okay.
so it has some red in it. We have another one that was an 820 or something that was strictly black and white, but I wanted to bring in a little more visible light with this. Because as I'd said earlier, I did a lot of thermal imaging in my engineering days. So I spent a lot of time working with infrared imaging, but those images were ones that we had to cool the sensor to 300 degrees below zero to get the camera to work. So it was a different kind of photography than picking up a little point and shoot and walking around with it. You weren't carrying around tanks of argon with you like I used to have to do. Okay, another infrared picture. I think this will be the last one. This is seaweed. And the idea for this came from a talk we had at the Camera Club last year. There's a photographer named Ron Rosenstock, and he showed a picture of seaweed photographed in infrared. And ever since that, I've been looking for seaweed because it reflects infrared so well. And then the water goes so nicely black behind it. So again, this is about 3 miles from our house out on the ocean. Walking around with an infrared camera, looking for things to do. And I'll flip back and forth between taking the infrared and taking a regular digital color camera out with me, just to shake things up and to kind of challenge myself visually when I'm out.
Have you experimented with color infrared at all?
I have, and I prefer black and white. I haven't done much with faux color there. I've seen some people that are good at it, but I just have not come up with anything I like yet.
Do you have one of those?
I do, yeah. I haven't used it too much yet, but I do have one. But I got that because you can also use that for going full black and white. So you have all the options with color infrared. You can do black and white or color.
Yeah, I've stuck pretty much with black and white because my foundation photography back in the 60s was black and white. So I'm very comfortable there. So this is this is at Portland Head.
That's the favorite rock.
This is my favorite rock. I have thousands of pictures of this rock. This was taken a couple weeks ago. This day surf wasn't too high, so I just did a long exposure to tame the waves a little bit. And I wanted something with the rock with the snow on top. I like this rock. I take pictures of it a lot. Ella's tired of looking at this rock. I'm stuck in a rut here.
Did you ever ask Ella to go out to the end and stand?
No.
She'd say no.
I don't want to lose her.
I'd have to clamber the fence,
Those,
slide down the hill,
yeah,
rock out. Oh.
those rocks are treacherous.
Yeah.
The seaweed on these rocks is the slipperiest stuff I've ever encountered in my life. We were helping to lead a workshop from Munch Workshops up in Acadia. And it was everything we could do to keep people from killing themselves by walking on the seaweed.
Yeah.
Okay.
More
Speaking
rocks.
of Acadia and rocks, you see a pattern here? Like I said, I'm a little stuck on rocks these days. Exposures. So this is an Acadia, which is not too far away, Acadia National Park. And that was just another nice day for taking a long exposure of a rock in an island in the fog. Not as complicated as Ella's pictures. And this is a beach that this past spring is the first time we've been able to get to in probably 10 years.
Sand Beach.
Sand Beach.
probably know it.
On Acadia National Park, because usually you can't find a
Finally
place.
sent me a link after all this friggin' time.
Say what?
You
So
know,
this is just a picture that was taken because it's been 10 years since we've been able to get to the beach because of all the people that were there normally in the spring and summer. So these are the kind of things we're doing to keep ourselves amused. And the other thing, like we talked about, is planning our next road trip. So Jay's asked us to talk just a little bit about this. We won't take too long. So this is out at Shiprock. This was 2 years ago. That's our mobile camera bag. And that's a little bit about it. It does get a bit dirty where we go, and we love it. We can stay out 4 or 5 days at a time before we run out of water or food. Run out of water first. We got solar power, so we don't run out of solar panels, so we don't run out of power unless there's no sun shining, which has happened occasionally. It sleeps 2 of us comfortably and gets us around quite comfortably. And these are some of the places where we've done some beauty shots of it. I thought the photographers would bear with the distortion in the upper left. You know what happens there with wide angle lenses. So this is the kind of stuff we go looking for to stay away from people, to go to places we haven't been, to take pictures. We look for dirt roads. The first RV we had, we broke because of dirt roads and gravel trails up in Canada. So we ended up getting this one because it doesn't break when you get on gravel roads and out in the bad backcountry roads. The other thing we get involved with is an interesting group of people. This is a place called the Overland Expo. So unfortunately, overlanding has now become a new buzzword for people looking for things to do. And this place has grown immensely in attendance over the years we've been going. But it's, I think these are all Ella's pictures. So this is a field day for taking pictures of things.
Oh yeah,
and
people, dogs, skeletons.
Late, on the front of a Toyota Tacoma, people with dogs and backpacks. The hipsters in the far right picture. These guys just started showing up this past year.
Yeah.
Usually before this, it was guys in camo. Now we have hipsters coming. This is going to hell in the handbasket really fast.
Where's
still
the
fun.
expo at?
Huh?
Where is it at?
This one was in Virginia.
Okay.
There's one in the spring
Oh, you
in
can go out to-
Flagstaff,
yeah,
Arizona, and there's one in the summer in Colorado. All of them been canceled this year. But this is an interesting place to go, especially, Jay, if you want to see how to build out your truck.
See all those things.
Wow.
The gadgets you find there. So we've talked with people there that have been traveling the world for 15, 20 years. They pretty much are
Motorcycles.
motorcycles. Can you imagine riding 600,000 miles on motorcycles?
Camping out.
Camping. That's all. They sold their house. They left England, and they happen to be back right now. But they've been circling the world since then.
But everybody just parks in a big field like that. It's just, and you learn to love your neighbors, and they
Yep.
generally are interesting people, have interesting stories, and it's kind of a fun long weekend.
And it's a good place to take pictures.
Yep.
Now, the guy on the left-hand side, where you see the rain on the window, that was an absolute mess and a horror show. The mud was knee deep, but it made for some interesting pictures. Ella knew we weren't going to be able to get out of there without someone towing us, but took it slow. We made it out. Took about 3 weeks to get all the mud off the truck, but we made it. And in the bottom left, you see some homemade trucks.
Yeah, you see all kinds.
Uh-huh. And the right, you see the reflection of Ella reading her phone there,
Lounging.
and that's her cousin in front of her, who she didn't know was her cousin until they started talking. Never, I think it went back 5th generations before they had a common
Through Ancestry.com.
through Ancestry.com. So you never know who you're going to run into. Okay, we're going to do about a 3-minute slideshow.
If you think you have time for a 3-minute slideshow. I mean, we might.
Sure, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So this is kind of pictures we took in a road trip 2016. That was 11,000 miles of driving. We went out to spend time with a friend that works on ranches, cattle ranches out in Eastern Oregon, and took some pictures along the way. These are all Ella's pictures. I have nothing to do with this slideshow. She stole the music too.
Slam the door behind him. All his daddy done. He left home with tomorrow. Riding on his phone. No particular direction. 17 and scared. It's the right outside the road. Driver said somewhere you go. He said anywhere but here. If you don't know where you're going, any old road will take you there. When it's rambling seeds are sowing, you can't find the will to care. Anyway you travel, red dirt, clay, and gravel, lost without a prayer, destination anywhere, any old road will take you there. A little all-night cafe, a young woman there in tears. The waitress says you want some coffee. Does anybody know you're here? She slowly tells her story. Says he don't love me anymore. I left my ring there by the bed, and I don't know what lies ahead. I've never been this gone before. If you don't know where you're going, any old road will take you there. When it's random seeds are sowing, you can't find the will to care. Anyway you travel, red dirt, clay, and gravel, lost without a prayer, destination anywhere, any old road will take you there. Sometimes the road is narrow, sometimes the path is straight. At times we face so many curves, right turns are hard to make. If you don't know where you're going, any old road will take you there. When it's rambling seeds you're sowing, you can't find the will to care. Anyway you travel, red dirt, clay, and gravel, lost without a prayer, destination anywhere, any old road will take you there. Out there running scared, in the middle of nowhere, any old road will take you there.
And that's all, folks.